Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and in today's video I'll be doing an Outlaw PvE guide for a 0 RNG build. A lot of people hate Outlaw Rogue for the Roll the Bones, even though I feel like it's such an integral ability to the playstyle, and I personally like it. But a lot of people dislike it for the RNG playstyle, which might make Outlaw feel a little bit uneven during certain matchups. This is why in this video we'll be trying to eliminate RNG as best as humanly as we can in order to give you guys a more comprehensive experience of an Outlaw Rogue. Now this build isn't going to be perfect for fully 0 RNG. There is still going to be some RNG involved, but we will be displacing the RNG of Roll the Bones playstyle into something that feels a little bit more consistent. So without further ado, let's dive into the build and see what it takes to set yourself as little RNG as possible when playing your Outlaw Rogue. First things first, we're gonna hit up the essences, because the essence of Vision of Perfection must be talked about. This is gonna be the essence that we'll be making our build around. With this essence, the active effect means that your abilities have a chance to proc Adrenaline Rush, granted at a 35% of its worth duration, and at rank 3, it does give you a little bit extra haste to you and a couple allies every time it does. The passive of it reduces the cooldown of your Adrenaline Rush by 18%, turning it from a 3-minute cooldown to a 2.5-minute cooldown. With the Restless Blades passive, as well as True Bearing, Outlaw Rogues naturally already reduce the cooldowns of our abilities every time we sync our finishers into an offensive or a buff mechanic. With the Vision of Perfection essence, the passive and the active will be seeing Adrenaline Rush a lot, whether us using Adrenaline Rush or getting random procs of Adrenaline Rush. The Adrenaline Rush itself isn't gonna be what's making our build amazing, but rather a talent that works off of Adrenaline Rush. To make this build work, we'll be combining the playstyle with Vision of Perfection together with the talent of Loaded Dice. Loaded Dice reads: every time you activate Adrenaline Rush, you get a guarantee of 2 or more buffs in your next roll. So I think you guys can start seeing what's going to be happening here. We're going to be getting a lot of Adrenaline Rushes from Vision of Perfection, and every Adrenaline Rush is going to give us a guarantee of 2 buffs or more. The Outlaw Rogue buffs that you can get from Roll the Bones aren't inherently bad, but some are more useful than others in different situations. But if you don't really care about using each buff simultaneously or independently in different areas, generally the rule is for Outlaw, every time you get 2 buffs or more, that's going to equal to a DPS increase. With this playstyle, we'll be getting a lot of 2 buff or more combos, allowing for a more consistent playstyle. You will still, however, get a randomization of what buffs you get. Sometimes you'll get a better buff combo, sometimes you won't get as good of a buff combo. But generally, getting 2 buffs at all times for Outlaw is going to increase your DPS in most situations. Let's move on to our talents. In the first row, we'll be going for a quick draw in order to get us a little bit extra value on our damage output. In the second row, I recommend Acrobatic Strikes to have a little bit of reach that you can use in order to avoid mechanics while also being able to hit the boss and increase the cleave capability of your Blade Flurry. In the next row, it's a question of Vigor or Deeper Stratagem. With the Vigor, we're going to be going for a Deadshot build. And I tested both of the builds, and it does seem like with this playstyle we need more abilities sunk into the enemy in order to have more chances to proc Vision of Perfection. While Deeper Stratagem will result in buffs that last quite a long while, sometimes you simply just don't get lucky with the procs of extra loaded dice. This is why we're going to be going for Vigor playstyle, and because of Vigor, we are going to be combining a triple Deadshot build. Make sure you have triple Deadshot for the most efficient output of your damage with this type of playstyle. In the next row, we usually will take Cheat Death, as it is the best talent for PvE content. In the following row, I prefer to go for Prey on the Weak. In the next row, obviously, we'll be taking Loaded Dice to make this build work. And in the last row, you can either go for Blade Rush or Killing Spree. Blade Rush is essentially just only a little bit ahead of Killing Spree in pure single target damage output, but Killing Spree isn't that far behind. And if that's the playstyle you prefer, Killing Spree is a solid and a viable option. When it comes to gearing your Outlaw Rogue, your gear will be very similar to your original playstyle. So when it comes to your stats, this is the breakpoints we're looking for. I recommend everybody to get anywhere between 11% and 15% haste. No more, but no less. Outside of that, we want to avoid mastery as best as possible on our gear and try to stack for equal amounts of critical strike and versatility. Sometimes when you have too much verse, crit becomes a better stat, and when you have too much crit, verse becomes a better stat. So try to keep a fair amount of both when gearing your rogue. Finally, let's talk about the playstyle. The main important thing you should care when it comes to playing this build is not to eat up your loaded dice procs. Sometimes when you get an opener on an enemy target, you might be able to get a loaded dice proc at the very beginning. This is where you should try to roll the bones in order to consume the loaded dice, then press Adrenaline Rush. If anything, you should try to use Adrenaline Rush as an ability on cooldown as much as possible. But you also should be aware of the loaded dice procs that you might be able to get right before or even after Adrenaline Rush. So try to make sure to refresh your buffs before using Adrenaline Rush when it comes to your rotation. It's also not a bad idea if you have not the best of buffs to re-roll your 2 buff or more combo at about 10 seconds. With 10 seconds, you also have the 10 remaining seconds feed into the pandemic mechanic, where you can kind of extend the duration of certain buffs and debuffs with certain specs. With Pandemic, you'll be able to extend the duration of your next 2 buff guaranteed combo. But, however, if you get a good set of buffs that are damage increase, then you want to make sure to maximize the damage of those buffs before you re-roll them. As per usual, try to build your combo points with Sinister Strikes and Pistol Shot procs. Do not overdraw on combo points, as in if you have 4 combo points and a Pistol Shot proc, save that Pistol Shot for later and just use the 4 combo points that you have into a finisher. First, when it comes to your finishers, establish your buffs, and that's going to be pretty easy, and just make sure you're maintaining your buff mechanic at all times. Because you will play in Deadshot in this build, use Between the Eyes as soon as you can on cooldown at 4 or 5 combo points, and try to follow up Between the Eyes with a Pistol Shot proc afterwards. When you don't have to maintain either one of those finishers, use Run Through to spend your combo points. Whenever you are doing damage to more than one enemy, be sure to turn on Blade Flurry. First, set up all your buffs and use your Adrenaline Rush, then use Blade Flurry before you follow up with your damage. Because Blade Flurry comes in charges rather than a passive sustained buff, you want to utilize as much damage during your Blade Flurry window. So don't pop Blade Flurry, then get your buffs and get your Adrenaline Rush. First, establish your buffs, establish your damage, pop your trinkets, use Blade Rush, then maximize your damage. And that's really what it comes down to when playing this build. It's actually quite a fun, fairly easy build to pick up, and it trivializes a lot of the buff mechanic, it trivializes the statistics behind it, and when people have to sometimes choose whether to go for damage or fishing for better buffs, you never have to do that ever again. However, playing this buff doesn't seem the highest right now. It's not a bad build whatsoever, it is simply an alternative to what is currently available. If you are fully in Benthic gear, you're going to see a slight DPS loss in your sims, but with the variety of buffs and the variety of different RNG combos that you can get from your buffs, you could see fairly similar damage. You can't always go by sims when it comes to Outlaw Rogues, because the amount of crits that you can get and the procs can always vary with fight-to-fight basis. But what this playstyle does for you is it lets you play out to the most consistent playstyle possible. And that's going to be the benefit of running the quote-unquote no RNG Outlaw Rogue build. Thank you guys for checking out this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Give this build a try and then come back in the comments. Let me know how you feel about this playstyle. Maybe this will be enough for some of you guys to even want to try Outlaw in patch 8.2. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I cannot wait to try this build in other areas like PvP, for example. That would be very, very interesting. Thank you all so much for coming by, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.